Are we on the brink of a third world war? It's a question that once seemed reserved for history books or distant nightmares, but now, it's a reality we must confront head-on. This isn't a hypothetical, it's a question for today, as Iran and Israel move from years of covert hostility to open military confrontation, with the world watching every move. The world watches, breath held, as these two regional powers exchange direct blows. The stakes are global, and the consequences could ripple far beyond the region. A single miscalculation could ignite a conflict that engulfs nations and economies far beyond the Middle East. The interconnectedness of our world means no country is truly isolated from the fallout. We'll break down the recent missile attacks, the deep-rooted animosity, and the global alliances now being tested. Every decision made in these tense moments could alter the course of history. This is not just a regional dispute, it's a flashpoint with worldwide implications drawing in the US, Russia, and China. The world's superpowers are now forced to take sides or broker peace. The specter of nuclear weapons looms over every decision, raising the risk of irreversible escalation. The threat of mass destruction is no longer theoretical, it's a chilling possibility. Iran's advancing nuclear program and Israel's undeclared arsenal create a volatile mix, fueling fears that the next strike could be catastrophic. Understanding what's happening and what could happen next is crucial. The world's eyes are fixed on every development, every statement, every move. The language of war is growing louder, but diplomacy still whispers in the background. There are those working tirelessly to prevent disaster even as tensions rise. Can reason prevail over the drums of war, or will fear and anger drown out the voices calling for peace? This is a story of power, history, and survival. Ancient grievances meeting modern weaponry. The past and present collide in a region where every conflict leaves deep scars. Let's examine the events that brought us to this dangerous new chapter and ask, what future will we choose in the shadow of war? For decades, Iran and Israel fought a shadow war. Proxies, cyber attacks, assassinations. But in early 2025, everything changed. Iran launched a direct missile and drone barrage at Israeli military sites, a bold, unprecedented move. Israel's Iron Dome intercepted many, but the message was clear: Iran was willing to strike openly. This was retaliation for years of Israeli covert operations against Iran's nuclear program. Israel responded swiftly, not just hitting proxies in Syria and Lebanon, but striking military targets inside Iran itself. The era of deniability ended. Direct confrontation began. Both sides have now demonstrated their reach and resolve. The psychological barrier of direct attack is gone. Now each faces a perilous choice: de-escalate or double down and risk a catastrophic war. The international community scrambles to contain the fallout. The momentum of war is powerful, and it's in motion. The world holds its breath. To understand today's crisis, we must look back to 1979. Before the Iranian Revolution, Iran and Israel were quiet allies. The revolution replaced the Shah with an anti-Western, anti-Israel Islamic Republic. Israel became Tehran's sworn enemy, a core tenet of the new regime. Iran's strategy, asymmetric warfare, funding and arming proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas and militias in Syria and Iraq. This axis of resistance encircled Israel, allowing Iran to wage war by proxy. Israel countered with strikes on Iranian assets, especially in Syria. Decades of shadow war set the stage for today's direct confrontation. The old rules no longer apply. The nuclear dimension makes this conflict uniquely dangerous. Iran claims its nuclear program is peaceful, but its actions suggest otherwise. The IAEA recently declared Iran in breach of its nuclear obligations. Iran responded by accelerating enrichment, defying international pressure. Israel sees a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat, one it will not tolerate. Israel's own nuclear arsenal remains undeclared but widely assumed. This creates a high-stakes standoff. Iran on the nuclear threshold, Israel determined to prevent it. An Israeli strike on Iran's facilities could provoke massive retaliation. In the worst case, the conflict could escalate to nuclear use. The world is staring at a nuclear nightmare born in the Middle East. Every move now carries the risk of catastrophic miscalculation. The clock is ticking. The stakes could not be higher. This conflict is a global chess match, not a local feud. Every move is calculated, every alliance scrutinized, and the stakes are higher than ever before. The world is watching as leaders weigh their options, knowing that a single misstep could have far-reaching consequences. The US is Israel's staunchest ally, providing aid and advanced weaponry, but is wary of being drawn into a wider war. American policymakers are under pressure at home and abroad, balancing support for Israel with the risk of escalation that could pull the entire region, and even the world, into conflict. Washington supports Israel but urges restraint, seeking a last-ditch diplomatic solution. Behind closed doors, American diplomats work tirelessly, hoping to prevent a spiral that could become uncontrollable. Russia backs Iran, deepening military and economic ties, and sees the crisis as a way to challenge US influence and benefit from higher oil prices. Moscow's involvement is strategic, aiming to shift the balance of power in its favor while strengthening its alliances in the region. China, the world's largest oil importer, wants stability but is economically tied to Iran. Its energy security depends on the uninterrupted flow of oil, making the stakes personal for Beijing's leadership. Beijing calls for de-escalation, but its dependence on Iranian oil complicates its neutrality. China walks a diplomatic tightrope, trying to avoid alienating either side while protecting its own interests. Each superpower's move could tip the balance toward peace or disaster. The world's most powerful leaders are locked in a high-stakes game where every decision could change the course of history. The Middle East is now the world's most dangerous geopolitical fault line. Tensions simmer just below the surface, threatening to erupt at any moment and draw in nations far beyond the region. Every decision in Washington, Moscow, and Beijing reverberates globally. The fate of millions hangs in the balance as capitals around the world brace for the next move. The risk of miscalculation is immense. A single error, a misunderstood signal, or a rash response could trigger consequences that no one can control. Alliances are being tested as never before. Old partnerships are strained, and new ones are forming in response to the shifting landscape. The world's great powers are deeply entangled. Economic, military, and political interests overlap, making it nearly impossible to separate one nation's fate from another's. The outcome here will shape the global order. What happens next will determine not just the future of the Middle East, but the direction of international relations for years to come. The stakes are nothing less than world peace. In this moment, the choices made by a few will echo across continents, affecting the lives of billions. A direct Iran-Israel war would trigger global shockwaves, sending ripples far beyond the Middle East. What starts as a regional conflict could quickly spiral into a crisis with worldwide consequences. First, energy. If Iran were to close the Strait of Hormuz, the world would feel it instantly. This narrow waterway is a lifeline for global energy, with 20% of the world's oil passing through its waters every day. Oil prices would skyrocket overnight, sending shockwaves through financial markets. The resulting spike could trigger a global recession, disrupt industries, and cripple already fragile supply chains, affecting everything from fuel to food. Major economies, China, Japan, and Europe, would be hit especially hard, as they rely heavily on imported energy. The economic pain would be felt in every corner of the globe. Iran's ability to threaten global energy supplies gives it enormous leverage, turning a local war into everyone's crisis and forcing world leaders to respond. Second, military escalation. Iran's proxies, especially Hezbollah, would likely attack Israel, opening new and unpredictable fronts across the region. The violence could quickly spread. US forces stationed in the region could become targets, dragging America directly into the conflict and raising the stakes for everyone involved. Israel's Arab neighbors might be drawn in, either as targets of retaliation or as reluctant partners, further complicating the situation and expanding the war's reach. The US has defense treaties and military bases throughout the region. Staying out would be nearly impossible, and any involvement risks escalation. A US intervention could provoke Russia or even China to respond, raising the specter of a direct superpower confrontation and a much wider war. The web of alliances and rivalries means a single spark in the Middle East could ignite a global inferno, drawing in nations from every continent. The world stands on a knife's edge, where the decisions of a few could determine the fate of millions. Despite the march toward war, diplomacy isn't dead. Behind the scenes, frantic efforts are underway to pull both sides back from the brink. The immediate goal: halt the cycle of attack and counterattack, and open back-channel communications to prevent miscalculation. The deeper challenge: resolve Iran's nuclear ambitions through renewed talks. The latest round of negotiations may be the last chance for a peaceful solution. The proposal: Iran rolls back enrichment and accepts inspections. In return, sanctions are lifted. Mistrust runs deep, and success is far from certain. The choice between war and peace rests with a handful of leaders. The world waits to see which path they choose. The next days will shape not just the Middle East, but the fate of us all. The question remains, can diplomacy prevail, or are we witnessing the dawn of a new world war?